police, county sheriffs, state police, and all federal law enforcement agencies all have one thing in common. They swore an oath to protect the United States Constitution. There have been uncountable instances where police have violated individuals' rights and, most disturbingly, broken the law in doing so, going even to the extent of committing murder. Police agency administrators always claim that any malfeasance is nothing more than a bad apple spoiling the barrel. If that be the case, there certainly seems to be an awful lot of bad apples spoiling the barrel of American society. The following videos illustrate just how unlawful and devious the police will be to enrich their own power and, in many cases, remove the average citizen from that aforementioned barrel. Always record the police, because going on their narrative of any situation is certainly not something that can be trusted to be truthful nor transparent.
60 years in a Texas prison. That was the punishment assessed this week to former Houston Police Detective Gerald Goins, who was found guilty of murder in connection to the deadly 2019 drug raid on Harding Street. The crime, which included lying to a judge to obtain a search warrant, cost two innocent people, Regina Nichols and Dennis Tuttle, their lives. Goins will pay for the wrongdoing with the remainder of his, closing perhaps the most disgraceful chapter in the department's history.
The former South Carolina police officer in this alarming cell phone video is headed to federal prison tonight for 20 years, one of the longest sentences ever handed down to an officer in a racially charged shooting. In court, families on both sides broke into tears as the judge sent 36-year-old Michael Slager away. From the beginning, he claimed self-defense.
Fired until the threat was stopped.
But today, Judge David Norton refused to believe this, saying Slager shot an unarmed man in the back as he ran away.
A police officer is about to spend years in prison, convicted of killing a man. Today, a Newport News judge sentenced Alvin Pearson for manslaughter.
Pearson was convicted of shooting and killing Henry Berry. The shooting happened at Berry's home in 2019.
The former Minneapolis cop that killed George Floyd is going to spend 20 years in a federal prison. Derek Chauvin was sentenced yesterday after pleading guilty to federal civil rights charges. Chauvin, who knelt on Floyd's neck for 9 minutes in 2020, is already serving 22.5 years for murder after a trial in state court. He will serve both sentences concurrently.
A former Texas police officer is now a convicted murderer. Facing the possibility of life behind bars, a jury found Roy Oliver guilty in the death of 15-year-old Jordan Edwards.
David Dixon was seen on video in April of 2021 with his flashlight and gun drawn, confronting men in a car who were burglarizing a van in the parking lot of Dixon's apartment complex in Tacoma Park. When the car fled, Dixon shot 5 times into the back of the vehicle after it passed him by. James Johnson and Dominique Williams were shot in the back and killed. Another man was wounded. Dixon pled guilty after an earlier mistrial in this case in exchange for no more than 30 years in prison.
Today, former Oklahoma detective Michael Neely, found guilty of murdering his police chief at a hotel on Pensacola Beach, was sentenced to life in prison.
A judge sentenced Sergeant Wayne Jenkins to 25 years in federal prison.
You have a gun and cocaine, probably I would say 2 1/4 just by looking at it.
The former head of the corrupt Baltimore Police Gun Trace Task Force wept and apologized for crimes that prosecutors say included at least 10 armed robberies, planting evidence, falsifying overtime, and selling $1 million worth of drugs, including prescriptions looted from pharmacies after Freddie Gray's death.
Former Luzerne County police officer who used and abused his authority to force women to perform sexual favors. That cop, former cop that is, appeared today in federal court to learn the penalty he must pay. The I-Team's Andy Mahalchik was there for the sentencing and joins us live now in Ashley. Andy.
Well, Mark, no doubt about it, high drama and lots of emotion inside that courtroom in Scranton today. Now, 31-year-old Mark Eicher was an Ashley Borough police officer when prosecutors say he would pull women over, usually late at night, and then intimidate them into performing sex acts in exchange for not arresting them. Well, today, a federal judge scolded Eicher, saying he violated the public trust and again violated trust as a police officer. Then he sentenced him to 15 years in prison.
Tonight, a former Colorado police officer has been sentenced to 14 months in jail in the death of Elijah McClain. Randy Rodema was convicted of criminally negligent homicide and assault for his role in the death of the 23-year-old black man. McClain died after he was placed in a chokehold and paramedics injected him with the sedative ketamine.
That's right. One of the men told the judge the deputies who tortured him, killed him, but he didn't die. The victims say they were beaten, tased, sexually assaulted, and subjected to racial slurs after the law enforcement officers accused them of dating white women.
Former Clark County Sheriff Jamie Knoll will spend the next 12 years behind bars for his role in a massive corruption case. That's according to our sister station in Louisville. Knoll pleaded guilty back in August to 27 felony charges. And today, the judge accepted a plea agreement, including a 15-year prison sentence. The last 3 years will be served on probation.
We have breaking news now. An emotional sentencing of former Newark police officer Giovanni Crespo. A judge sentenced him to 27 years in prison.
South Florida police chief is going to prison for leading a conspiracy in his department to frame black people for crimes they did not commit.
After former Philadelphia police officer Eric Ruck was sentenced to 11.5 to 23 months in the county prison after Ruck was convicted of voluntary manslaughter in September. Ruck cried in court and apologized Thursday for his split-second decision, and he offered prayers and condolences to Plowden's family.